Welcome to All Vaults Unlocked, the podcast destination for all of your trophy and achievement hunting needs. We don't discriminate here, we're all hunters at the end of the day, and this is our second episode. We are very grateful for the reception of the first episode. All me and my beautiful co-host Crimson here wanting to do was provide more podcasts in this genre to the best of our ability for everyone to enjoy and touch on some juicy subjects, with the focus of this episode being collectibles and how they affect our trophy hunting and achievement hunting and gaming as a whole, which, as Crimson said, is very, very spicy. But of course, we've also got news to go over in the trophy achievement hunting scene, as well as what we've been hunting, which I'll let Crimson start with this one this time around.
Well, on my side, outside of the spooky season game, which we'll be talking about a little bit later, I've been spending most of my time playing the newly released Digimon Story Time Stranger, which is, without a shadow of a doubt, my choice for Game of the Year 2025. Digimon Story Time Stranger is the next entry in the Story franchise, and for you who don't know, the Digimon games are typically broken into two subsets, the Story games and the World games. There is potential for a third subset to be birthed from a recently released game, which I'll be talking about a little bit later on. Conveniently, it would have been perfect for spooky season if I hadn't already platinumed it. There's no guide at the moment for Digimon, but if I was going to give it my approximation, I'd say the difficulty is around a 6 or a 7 out of 10, based off of what I've played so far and what I've heard people tell me about the Mega Plus difficulty and how challenging it can be. So about a 6 or 7 sounds fair. There's definitely some challenging elements to it. There's been some fights that have absolutely clapped me and made me question, do I need to change up my Digimon? Do I need to change my lineup a little bit? Do I need to put some new moves on there? Or do I need to strategize this a little bit differently? So you will fail in this game, but that's good because it makes you really reassess things and come back stronger than before. The story itself is absolutely captivating. I find myself completely invested, just like I was with the Cyber Sleuth game and Hacker's Memory. But one of the things I really like is that all of the Digimon have fully voiced unique signature moves, which is such a nice touch because a lot of these games, like Pokemon for instance, don't even bother with that kind of thing. So it's nice to have that unique little touch. But the biggest thing I really love is the fact that we can finally ride Digimon, be it on their back, on their shoulder, whatever. For fans of the games or the show, this is just amazing to see because it actually feels like you're a true Digidestined partnered up with your Digimon. Luckily, there's no real annoying collectibles in this one, which is really good considering the story games are usually infamous for rather annoying collectibles, but I'll be talking about that a little bit later in our main topic. But in summary, if you've ever been curious about the Digimon games, or you just like RPGs or monster catching or taming games in general, I cannot recommend giving this game a try enough. There is a demo available, so if you don't want to commit to the purchase just yet, you can try the demo, which is like the early stages of the game, very early stages, and you'll be able to determine whether or not this game is for you. But honestly, I think you'll love it, and hopefully this is a fresh new breath of life to the IP, because us Digimon fans are hungry for more, especially after this masterpiece of a game.
And I did play some of it myself, and I have to admit it was a really interesting space to see Digimon in. It definitely feels more premium than the past games that I've seen, because the last time I really played any Digimon game seriously was back on the PS1, where you're like Agumon and you're like pulled into a digital world. It was probably Digimon Adventure.
The Digimon World.
Digimon World, that'll be it, yes. And I've not given any of the ones a chance, really. Like Cyber Sleuth I've seen, but it looked lower quality, at least from what I've played with, obviously, Time Stranger. But at the same time, obviously, the platinums themselves put me off of those games once I'd, yourself and Joel told me about the horrible medals. So naturally, with Time Stranger being more approachable, as you say, without like horrible collectibles, I thought I'd give it a go, and I've not played as much as Crimson has, but I do agree with him. Just in the combat alone, it feels really approachable, but it's got a lot of depth to it as well. And at the same time, again, each Digimon having voice lines and voice attacks is like a really big breath of fresh air, so I totally agree.
Well, I'm glad to see you're enjoying it so far, Steve, and hopefully, I know you're talking about potentially restarting because you've been idle from it enough that you want to start the story fresh and just take another whack at it. So, hopefully you'll really enjoy the experience. But what about yourself? What have you been playing?
We'll get into that in just a second. But just real quick, we want to know what you've been playing too, so pop it down below in the comments, because we're always interested in seeing what everyone has been playing, because we might find a game that we want to play, and vice versa. However, because we received a sequel last month on PlayStation Plus, I decided to go for the Platinum for Psychonauts. It's a cult classic action, kind of hack and slash platformer that's rather unique in its premise, but I was not expecting the PS2 port to be so rough, if I'm being completely honest, as the frame rate is rather stuttery, and it can even drop below 20 FPS at times. I mean, I'm not joking, it literally goes to the teens at times. Now, there are some missable trophies in there, which you probably should check up on first, like, so you don't have to play to a certain part of the game. For example, going to the parking lot randomly after a certain segment where the game encourages you to go back into the brain training segment, but you've got to go to a parking lot just to see one of your fellow students in the campsite with a jockstrap on his head. That is for a trophy. Keep in mind, you've got nothing to prompt you to leave the lab because you come out of the brain machine and it's like, right, go back into the machine to do the next part of training. There's nothing telling you to leave and go have a look around again. And if you've already explored the parking lot, for example, in the campsite, why would you go back? You wouldn't. So it's got a few dirty trophies like that in it, but you can get out of the way. And I actually missed it even knowing it was there. So that's how easy it is to miss it. And I had to reload a save and play for half an hour. I will say, for the first, maybe third of this game, it feels like up until the Milkman conspiracy, the entire game's a tutorial. The first few hours, it feels like you're playing through it and you're getting a tutorial on collectibles, because this game has a lot, and we'll talk about that later with the main topic. But once the combat comes into it, which is standard melee with abilities like psychokinesis shots, so you can set people on fire with pyrokinetics. You can also look through their eyes, you can use invisibility, you have your telekinesis. It's really fun once you get into it, and it's a wacky, it's got some puzzles. It's a really quirky, psychedelic 3D platformer. It's really fun once the game actually gets going. It's very slow of a start, and you are going to have to deal with a lot of collectibles. Again, it has one trophy in particular we'll talk about later. But for now, I will move on from that beautiful game, and we've got to go into the other game we've both been playing, which has been Gears of War Reloaded. We talked about it briefly last month and said we would have been playing it by the time the podcast came out. And we talked about a specific trophy, which we've been not really working towards too much, which is Seriously for getting 10,000 multiplayer eliminations. The problem with Seriously is it used to be a lot harder. And this is a little gripe I have with this, because I was really looking forward to getting some semblance of redemption from my past self for getting 7,000 or 8,000 on the original Gears of War back in 2006.
He was very passionate about it, very passionate.
Yeah, because it's I was close to getting that many. I was close to 10,000, even though back then it was a bit of an iffy one where it might not track properly, but I'll mention that in a second. In the remaster, the Ultimate Edition, I believe it launched in the same way, but they updated the game at some point to where they allowed anything outside of ranked, which was essentially Warzone / Execution and maybe Annex. Outside of that, the kills would not count, which is a major issue because you had to do it in ranked mode, and you would be lucky to get a few per round, or even a few per game, depending on your luck and your opponents. Now, social ones count, just like it did in the Ultimate Edition, which was a remaster from 10 years ago, which means it is ridiculously easy to get this. Now, I'll take a quote here from, I believe it's True Trophies, or True Achievements. It's actually from True Achievements. It's from one of these websites. I don't know. You'll see it on screen right now who's accredited. The original Gears of War from the guide says, averaging a score per round, this will take you around 400 hours of gameplay to complete, not counting the time spent waiting for matches to get started. What's more is, players have reported getting upwards of 13,000 eliminations and not having the achievement unlock. That is very accurate. They're saying 400 hours if you get one elimination per round of, say, Execution, Warzone, what have you. You weren't always guaranteed one. Sometimes you'd have one per game or 0 per game, depending on how you look. That's not counting menu times or anything else. So our original estimate on the last episode was correct based on the original Seriously trophy. However, now it is so much easier. If you play King of the Hill, you can get a score of 20 to 50 quite easily in the space of half an hour. It is ridiculous the amount of eliminations you can get. It is ridiculously easy.
If you're good like he is, if you're like me, then you'd be lucky to get 5 kills.
You've had 20 before. In King of the Hill, you've had 20. You have had that many.
Flukes happen, and that was a fluke.
And I wouldn't call myself good. I'm actually kind of rusty and kind of bad at the game these days, which shames me to my core. It's actually upsetting. But it has been 15 years, so what can you say? Or probably longer, damn. I'm not going to dwell on that. Either way, it's so much easier now to get this trophy to where it's actually disappointing. But I'm still going to get it. I'm still going to enjoy the way. I'm almost in 1,000, I think. But it's just going to be so much easier. That's why I'm trying to get the rest of the trophies legitimately, because you can boost a lot of them. You can boost, for example, Nubpona for getting 20 shutouts in King of the Hill / Blitz, which is when you essentially play a round and you stop the enemy team from scoring a single point in a ring for that round. And you've got to do that 20 times, which is phenomenally hard for a reason I'll say in a second. And 2, obviously, for like getting an elimination with each weapon in multiplayer. I got that last night, actually. But speaking of King of the Hill, as Crimson will tell you, it feels at the moment like Achievement Hunters and Trophy Hunters combined are kind of missing the point of the mode of trying to win, and they're using it as a place to farm kills.
Yeah, like, look, guys, we're trophy hunters. We've been doing this for a while, but I've always been of the mindset of we should not be ruining other people's online experiences just to indulge our hobbies. The same cannot be said for the people that play this game. We have, to this day, at least I haven't, Steve might have because he's played a little bit by himself, but to this day, we have not won a single King of the Hill game. Everyone and their mother seems to be going into this mode and forgetting that you're playing King of the Hill. They think they're playing Team Deathmatch with extra time added onto it. I've heard plenty of other people say they've had the same issue, but we should not be ruining people's online experiences. If you're playing King of the Hill, play damn King of the Hill. It's just ruining the game. For it, like, I feel bad for the people who are playing the game that don't give a damn about trophies.
Because I remember playing these modes back in the day and it wasn't like this. People wanted to win the match. Like, I understand the bit of hypocrisy here, don't get me wrong. You're trying to get a shutout. Your goal is to get a trophy by getting the enemy team getting 0 points. But you're still playing the mode as intended to win. You're just going for the edge case scenario of, like, I want to get them 0 points. I don't want them to get a single point this round.
You're still at least doing the damn objective.
Every single game I've been in so far feels like it's a situation of, right, this is, as Crimson said, TDM. We don't care about the ring. We just want to get as many eliminations as humanly possible. And the enemy team usually is playing for the ring, and they will just guard it and protect it, and they get an easy win. And then you're just sat there like, I'm like the only person, or if you're playing with someone like Crimson, we're the only 2 people trying to get the ring, and there were 2 people running around trying to get kills. And it's like, dudes, you're making the game bad. And the thing is, people will play this game because they're interested in it and don't care about the trophy or achievements. The game is sold quite bad.
Oh, that's an understatement.
I am a Gears of War fan, a mega fan, and it has sold less than 300,000 copies as of about a week or 2 ago on PlayStation, which is abysmal, but it's a remaster of a remaster, so what do we expect? People wanted a trilogy. People wanting a Gears of War 1. I did, because I'll always take it, but I'm a simp for Gears of War, so what do you expect?
This was dealt with very poorly. Like, I don't want to... I'm so glad Microsoft's finally playing, like, nice with us properly, like putting some of their main big franchise titles out there. But like, this game was set to be ruined because if you think about it, everyone says about how well it's done on Xbox. Number 1, it's on Game Pass. Number 2, I had to flip my fingers around there to be safe. Number 2, anyone who got the Ultimate Edition of the game got it for free.
We haven't played much of the campaign yet, but there is one trophy in the campaign, Brothers to the End, which is for defeating General Ram on the train freight right at the end of the game, without every player going down but not out, and on insane difficulty, which sounds hard, but is actually, it kind of is easier. You can prepare for it, and you can reload checkpoints. Worst case scenario, reload the chapter, but it's still relatively not too bad if you plan for it. The only real danger is the fact that obviously Ram has got a Troika turret as a gun, and of course you've got the Krill who he commands, and they can do a lot of damage, and that's just from memory from back in the day.
I'm probably gonna sabotage him at every corner to the point where he'll be like, I don't want you to take offense to this, Crimson. I don't. I'm playing this with somebody else to get the damn trophy, and I'll come back and play with you later. And I won't even take offense to it. I won't even take offense.
You will be fine. It's not as scary as it seems, trust me. But speaking of scary, it's October, which means it's spooky season. And just like many of you, we've been hunting some spooky games between us. But since I've waffled on quite a bit there, I'll let Crimson start with his spooky game for the month.
I decided to use spooky season not only to play Resident Evil 6 again, but stack its platinum alongside my very good friend Raven. The game can be completed completely by yourself, but I'd highly advise finding yourself a co-op partner, whether that be a friend, family member, or whatever, to play through the game and have some fun and chaotic co-op adventures. Experiences that my friend Raven is still shaking from to this very day, from all the times I blew him up with grenade launchers, pipe bomb arrows, and not to mention knocking him around the map like no one's business with the Magnum. The most challenging thing about the game, however, surprisingly, is not the professional difficulty run. It's the trophy Mad Skills. For that, you are required to unlock and max out all of the level-based skills that the game has to offer, which requires a grand whopping total of 954,000 skill points. Yeah, that'd be a lot. Either way, I personally love this game just as much as I love any other Resident Evil, and I encourage you all to give it a proper chance rather than blindly listening to the masses and following their opinions. But how about yourself, Stevie Barr? What have you done spooky season this year? I've talked enough about myself. I swear to God, if you mention something capybara related, or worse, bloody Christmas related, I'm going to end you.
Hey, I'm heavily against Christmas, so, you know, it's not going to be like that, but I can't promise anything about capybaras. They're always around me. However, I have been playing a classic which I've not played and 100%ed since the Xbox 360 days, and that was Alan Wake Remastered, or Remake, whatever they call it. It's one of those things. It's obviously a 4 out of 10, 25 hours in asterisks, 2 runs in asterisks game for the Platinum Trophy. And I say that because of one big reason. I'll have a video out about this actually not long after the podcast, which kind of touches on this, but the trophy guide obviously suggests that you do it on easy mode, which they say is equivalent to the normal difficulty of the 360. Now, it's been a long time since I played it, but I've gone on normal mode, which is apparently harder than the original normal mode. I've not noticed a difference. It honestly feels the same, but hey, I'm not going to argue with people if they've done research. However, you need to collect a ton of collectibles, which I'm not going to go too far into because that's the main topic of today's podcast episode. But they are rough with this game. There's useful collectibles like the manuscript pages, which are rather unique in the sense of they narrate Wake's story, as in they will hint at what's to come, what has happened, and what's happening in parallel to you as you play the game, which is a really interesting concept. Like, why do they want to spoil what's coming ahead? But that's more of a case of it's setting the stage because it is a horror/thriller game, so they want you to fear what's potentially coming up, and will those words come true? So it's always one thing I really liked about those collectibles. However, there is one that is significantly worse, and it's one that I still remember from the 360 days, and it's the 100 coffee thermoses. You can't track them like the manuscript pages, and they are always in horrible, out-of-the-way places where you would never even think to look. It's like, oh yeah, I start a level here, let's run up a hill for 5 minutes to find a coffee thermos randomly on top of a hill where you would never naturally go, which ruins the pacing of the game. Although Nightmare mode is required for some of the manuscript pages, which I found it interesting back then. It's like it's a bit of a weird decision that some collectibles are tied to the higher difficulty, but it's a cool thing, and it does mean you've got to do a second playthrough because you can't do Nightmare from the start, but Nightmare is always the most thrilling way to play Alan Wake, so I definitely don't mind it. But because of the way I'm playing the game, and I don't want to ruin the initial story, because I've forgotten a lot about, for example, The Taken and The Dark Place and how everything works. So I wanted to play the game again before Alan Wake 2. But I also don't want to ruin my fresh experience again with the game since it's been so long, which means I wasn't going to use a guide on my first playthrough, which means my first playthrough is essentially I'll try and find the manuscript pages, but there's no way in hell I'm going to get every single thermos, and at the same time, that means I'll have to do an easy playthrough after that to collect all these missing things, and then do a Nightmare run to get the last few pages and the Nightmare trophy. But that is a point which I'm happy with, but that's why I say the 25 hours and 2 runs is a bit of an asterisk, because if you play it like I'm playing it, it's going to take you a bit longer, but you'll enjoy the game more, so I always recommend it. I mean, last thing I'll say about Alan Wake is the combat has always felt unique. It's a bit iffy because the camera likes to switch to its right side or rather than its left, which always feels weird, and you've got to manually switch it every 5 minutes. But despite that, its concept is quite fun, as in you are fighting the darkness which has enveloped your enemies, the people around you in Bright Falls, and you've got to use your light to weaken your enemies so you can actually take them out in the first place, or just try and escape and dodge them for your life until you get to a light source that will protect you. It's got a very eerie atmosphere. It's almost like you're playing a Stephen King in his own horror story. It's just really, really unique in that sense, and there's no surprise it's become a cult classic. However, we are moving on to our next segment, which add new games to PlayStation Plus and Extra, and let's not forget Premium, even though, let's face it, if they've got no trophies, half of us don't even care. I'm part of that camp. Yeah, so for this, we are going over... He's not yet.
I'm not part of that.
Yeah, but hey, I'll emulate on the Steam Deck. I'll play on something else. I don't need to play on PlayStation if there's no trophies. That's my deal. But we're going to start with the PlayStation Plus Essentials, which is our free games a month, as long as your subscription is active, of course. Either way, the first game from the PlayStation Plus Essentials this time is quite a big one. It's Alan Wake 2, we talked about it earlier. It's a 3 out of 10, 20 hours, one playthrough. Again, that probably won't be the case depending on how you do it, but there's been some updates which might actually make that more of a reality, or one playthrough plus partial. You actually return to the mind of Alan Wake and the Dark Place with the highly anticipated return to Bright Falls with this long-awaited sequel. I think it's been 13 years or so. It's been quite a while. Now, I haven't played much of this. I did play about an hour or so of it, and then I decided I want to replay the original, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, which means I deleted the game just to go back to it later. However, my first impressions of the game was literally waking up in water, seeing a dude's bare ass and his bush in your hands, essentially. Quite an interesting start to a game, I'll say how much at least. You didn't really see much enemies at the start, besides a few, which I can't really describe because I don't know much about it. It definitely seemed weird compared to the first game, but I assume it's kind of... I'm just thinking it's a cult of some type. Either way, you followed that by switching to the FBI agent Anderson. Now, from what I gather, you switch between Agent Anderson and Alan Wake throughout the game. So you play two separate characters and with different, obviously, intentions and motivations throughout the game. But I didn't play much of her before I actually deleted the game, but I noticed a rather interesting looking mechanic the game has called a mind space. Naturally, being an FBI agent, she's there to solve cases, and that's what she's there for in Bright Falls. So essentially, you go into this headspace where you can walk around your apartment, look at the case files and connect all the evidence and try and figure out what's going on. But there's a little twist to that, because the game did tell me you are not safe while you're in here, so the game doesn't pause. So while you're in the headspace, you're still stood there in the woods randomly, wherever you go into the headspace. So technically that means you could be attacked by an enemy or taken or whatever, which I find that rather interesting, because that's really cool. That is just something for me where that'll be a really interesting mechanic throughout the game, so I do applaud them for making something new there. There are points of no return apparently, but as I alluded to, apparently after patch 1.15 you can use chapter select for some collectibles now. From what I read, it seems like it's all the collectibles, so you might be able to go back and get any that you missed, which means you might not have to do a second playthrough anymore, but again, I don't trust it. All I'll say is just enjoy the game first, worry about those afterwards, because games like this, which are highly narrative, I think you do yourself a disservice by using a collectible guide on your first run. But last thing I'll say about it, apparently there is one missable, which is always good to know about, and it's All Smiles, which is fully upgrading a single weapon. And apparently it's potentially missable because if you don't focus on a single weapon, you can miss out because you won't have enough, obviously, resources to max it out. But that's Alan Wake 2 for us right now.
Our next game on the Essentials lineup is Goat Simulator 3, as much as I'm sure Steve is very happy to hear that. It's a 3 out of 10, 25 hours and one playthrough. It's also the game that was so bad they had to skip the second game. At least that's what Steve told me. It's got a rather simple list. You just need to complete the story and nab out all those miscellaneous trophies. There's no Flappy Bird this time, I don't believe. Hopefully not. I could be lying. If there is, I'm sorry. It's too late. You booted up the game. You're screwed. But although you do need to find all the trinkets, jump off every single ramp in the game, and complete every single instinct for the Platinum Cleanup. And who knows, maybe next time they'll release Goat Simulator 2, maybe 2.5. I'm sure Steve will be very happy for that.
Last up for this is Cocoon, which I never heard about. It's 2 out of 10, 5 hours, so it's a nice cheeky fast platinum. And apparently it's one playthrough. Again, if you believe that, it's up to you. You never know these days. Now, I looked at the trailer for this. It's from the creator of Limbo and Inside, so that's already some good pedigree right there. And it's a very looking unique puzzle adventure game. It has what I'd call a very dark and creepy vibe from what I saw from the trailer. And it's definitely one that pulled me in within that 1 minute and 30 where I was like, right, I actually want to play this, which is quite rare for me. You do need to finish the game on just generally to get most of the trophies, which again will take more or less 5 hours based on, I imagine, your own exploration, because if you're like me, you'll take probably 10 hours. And of course, your own puzzle solving abilities, so if you're like me, 200 hours. And you need to obviously release all of the Moon Ancestors for the Platinum, and I believe they're just like a collectible, essentially. It's a kind of collectible in a sense. But that is it for the Essentials this month. So we're going to move on to the new games to Extra and Premium. First of which is As Dusk Falls, not As Dusk Falls, for the PS4 and PS5, which is a 2022 adventure game developed by Interior Night and published by Xbox Game Studios. It's yet another Xbox release, as they're releasing everything these days, as we saw with Halo, but we might talk about that next month. Either way, it was released in March 2024 for PlayStation. The game revolves around interactive storytelling and novel techniques to tell the story of two families whose trajectories collide in the Arizona desert in 1998, the year of my birth. This can be experienced individually or via co-op multiplayer.
1998? Sure by that one, Steve? I think that myself and Sarah Barra would have some arguments to have there about the validity of that claim and statement. Next up on the list, we've got Poppy Playtime Chapter 1 for the PS4 and PS5. And it's an episodic puzzle survival horror video game series, first developed and published in October 2021 by an American indie developer, Mob Entertainment. The game is set in an abandoned factory owned by the fictional toy company Playtime Co. You control a former employee who receives a letter inviting them back to the company after many years after the disappearance of all of the staff members without a single trace of any of their whereabouts. Why the hell would you go back there?
I mean, who knows? The next one, do you want to cover this one or shall I cover it? Because I think it holds a more special place to you than me.
I'll let you have this one, because otherwise I'm going to get complained about why I haven't started streaming it again, and you're probably going to do it anyway.
It is, of course, Until Dawn remake for, yes, the PS5. It's a game that needs no introduction to many, even myself who played it rather late in its life cycle, but it's still a cult classic horror thriller game. Built by Ballistic Moon, who worked hard to bring it back from the PS4 DNA into the Unreal Engine 5 for the PS5 with heavily improved visuals, animations and environmental details, and of course adjustments were made to the controls and the camera as well as the story so that it can be enjoyed by fans both old and new. Without spoiling for those new to the game, it centralizes around a group of friends. They're stranded up in the frosted mountains, reuniting after a particular tragic event split them apart in the prologue. Constant dangers and horrors await them on every corner, and it's your job to control the story and their ultimate fates.
The next game is one that actually I didn't know about, and Steve didn't know about, but when we were looking at for researching on this podcast, we want to know more. And that is V Rising on the PS5, which was brought to us by Stunlock Studios, an action RPG survival entry. The game looks gorgeous in its vampiric top-down setting, and the combat looks very inviting to any fans of the top-down hack-and-slash titles, such as the Diablo franchise, something that gives Steve PTSD, I'm sure. But yeah, being a survival game, there are like lots of menial tasks, such as mining, tree cutting, etc., but from the trailers alone, it looks worth a bite. No pun intended.
I'm not going to lie, I'm already going to install this because it looks beautiful. A vampiric setting with top-down hack-and-slash Diablo mechanics and survival built in. Why not? I did hear in one review it's a bit slow to start. You might have to get about 4, 5, 6 hours into the game before it really gets going. But hey, if you go in with that knowledge, it'll help you so much more because then you'll be like, right, I'm just going to invest and it might be worth my weight. Either way, the next one is Wizard with a Gun, which is a very weird title, for the PS5. It is a 2023 twin-stick shooter developed by Galvanic Games and published by developer Digital. It shares some elements from survival games such as resource collecting, just like essentially the V Rising game, collecting and management, as well as base building. You also control a wizard who is attempting to stop the forces of chaos from destroying the world. So it sounds rather generic. Whether it's good or not, we'll leave that down to you to decide.
But one thing that I know that is seen as a good game, and a good franchise in general, is our next game. Back to the world of Yakuza with Like a Dragon as the next extra title, where you play as Ichiban, recently released from almost 20 years in prison, as you find your place in the world. The Platinum is naturally a beefy 80-hour investment, but thankfully nothing is missable. And hey, at least it's not Yakuza 0. There was a hell of a lot more than 80 hours in that thing. Although we are getting a new version of it, so yay! What about premium? What did we get in premium, Steve? Because I believe our next game's premium before the real beefy one.
Now, I don't know why I'm covering the premium titles, considering what I believe about half of these games these days and their trophies. Tekken 3 is the classic fighting game from Namco, set almost 20 years after the events of Tekken 2, and a debut title for some of the staple characters of the series to date, such as Jin Kazama, Ling, and I suggest you rule 30 for her, and Brian Fury. Unfortunately though, following the trend that we have seen with Bandai Namco and others like Capcom, these classic games, there is no trophy support available, which is why I say don't support it, do not buy it, just leave them to rot. Play it on any other device, emulate it on your phone, play it on PC, do whatever. Just don't buy these things. Because as trophy hunters, we need to show them there is a lower level of ceiling to buy these games when there's no trophies at all. It's like, hey, screw you. You're not going to put the minimal effort in? We're not buying the game. That's just my opinion. I played these games when I was a kid. I don't need to play them again.
However, I will stand by the point that if you are already on premium, why not play it anyway? Because, you know, you're paying for premium anyway.
You've got better use of your time. There's better games you can play, like the next one, for example.
This is true. The next game is the big boy of this month's crop. No doubt, Silent Hill 2 Remake should sound very familiar to all of you out there. Bloopers Team Remake throws you and James Sunderland back into the mysterious town of Silent Hill for another round of demonic monster slaying adventures. Although, let's face it, they're going to slay your ass a lot more than you're ever going to slay theirs. And yeah, unfortunately, much to my dismay and dislike and disdain, the platinum has been made significantly easier. I've mentioned this many times. I am a big hater of the fact that these remakes of harder games are really being catered towards being made significantly easier. But I digress. The Platinum, like I said, is easier than the PS3 HD edition, which I still do 100% recommend you playing. Yes, it is aged, but it is where it all began, and you wouldn't have this remake without it. So show appreciation where appreciation is due. It is the most popular game in the Silent Hill franchise, after all.
I'm happy about this because I've been wanting to buy this, and I'm actually glad I didn't. So I've got it for free now, essentially, but this remake does look gorgeous. The Platinum, yes, is easier. I would prefer the harder Platinum rather than, say, like a 3 or 4 out of 10. However, I have expressed many times how I do not like the requirements for Silent Hill 2 on the PS3, just because the 10-star run is kind of ridiculous in the sense of it doesn't agree with my ADHD brain. I could easily do it, but there's so much to track, it would make the experience excruciatingly horrible. Not a fun thing to do, like, say, going through a complete game in hard mode, considering you've got to track all your you've got to track X amount of melee kills, X amount of range kills, you've got to track pickups, you've got to do a certain boat in a certain time, and hopefully time it right, you've got to do X amount of saves, you've got to do X amount of speed. There's so much to track, it just makes it a horrible experience to play. I mean, if you want to go for it, I highly recommend it because it's a prestigious Platinum. But at the same time, I'm actually glad they didn't go overboard with the remake, because when you've got to track that much just to get a Platinum, I think it becomes a bit of a joke. It's like, I'm doing this for fun or a challenge. I'm not doing it for a bloody job. Either way, that is the extra games done for in this segment.
Right, now that list is over, guys, we're going into the next segment, which is our extra picks of the month. I'll be leading off first, and then we'll lead into Steve. So I hinted towards this game earlier on, guys, the horror Digimon game that's out there. Digimon Survive is actually a very different game. This game is very visual novel styled, at least in the premise of the story. The game does focus a lot more on the spooky and dreadfully eerie kind of adventure, rather than the happy-go-lucky adventures that Digimon's well known for. Your partner Digimon in the game, as you can expect, is the ever so faithful, iconic Agumon, because you know, Ash has Pikachu, and everyone and their bloody mother has Agumon. But obviously, based off the path that you take, like I mentioned earlier, your Digimon Digivolution line will change, and you'll get different end paths, different champions, ultimates, and megas. That's what makes it a little bit interesting, because if you aren't a big fan, you're getting to see a lot of new Digimon. If you are a fan, you're getting to see a lot of different paths and probably play some Digimon you've never played before. This game really does focus on telling you the story, whereas typically the Digimon games, while there is a story and it's definitely a focus, you're really focused on the big flashy animations and the attacks and the Digivolutions and all the flashy stuff. There is combat in it. If I had to compare it to anything, I'd compare it to some of the older Game Boy Advance games and things like that. The one notable trophy I will mention for you guys before I move on to Lion Steve talk is the hardest trophy in the game, mind you, the Master Researcher, which requires you to encounter and own pretty much every Digimon in the game. And yes, you will probably read the trophy and it says encounter them all. It's lying. You need to own them. Anyway, Stevie Barr, what about you?
Mine is Dredge, which is a game that I did clean up and platinum this past week, which I didn't mention it earlier in games I've been playing because it was a cleanup. It was a few hours. And I played this quite a while ago, several months back, maybe even longer. It's 3 out of 10. It's 20 hours, and it is one single playthrough with 2 endings, which thankfully you can just continue from the main menu and just do the other one as long as you've got the requirements. The best way I can describe this is think of a very creepy Lovecraftian horror, and then plop a boat into that, be a fisherman, trawling along in a survival game, but in a calm environment until nighttime falls, at which point all hell breaks loose. These horrors from the depths start breaking out and start trying to consume you and pull you down with them to your demise. There's mini games attached to the fishing. Each fish has got its own shape for your inventory, so I think classical Resident Evil there. And each fish has its own mini game. Main focus of the game, trophy-wise, is kind of like the Pokédex. So think Pokemon, but fish. There's loads, I think there's like 150, maybe 160 fish in the game, including aberrations. So you've got to capture every single fish, including the base forms and their mutated Lovecraftian aberrated forms. And that's for 2 separate trophies. These ones are harder to catch, so your best bet is to use one of your ritualistic abilities, which pretty much guarantees you will get a aberration. Some fish have got multiple aberrations, and unfortunately you can't guarantee which one you'll get, but this will guarantee you get at least one, but it will sanctify and remove that fishing spot from the game for about a week or so, so you will kind of kill the fishing spot. But that is my gem of the month. I just think it's a really cool game like Stardew where you can sit back, you can just play it, have fun, and then you can crap yourself as you're trying to sail at night time, which you do have to for some fish, just so you can make more use out of your hours. At this point, we're moving on to segment 4, which is gaming news and all other business regarding trophies and achievements. But we're starting with Hollow Knight Silksong, a game I do not know much about. It is highly praised. I am not a Metroidvania fan necessarily too much. I'm also not much of a side-scrolling fan. I've played a bit of the original game, don't kill me. It's just not my jam. So I'm going to let Crimson take this story away.
Yeah, there's a couple of different things about this trophy list, which is one of the big things that people noticed when the game came out, which shouldn't be a surprise because the first game was technically the same. There was a massive difference in the lists in terms of achievements versus trophies. For context, with Silksong, there is a total of 52 achievements compared to the 34 trophies that are available on PlayStation. A lot of the trophies, mind you, are related to very simple minor challenges, so it's not a very big deal. However, there is just a couple of minute, very difficult trophies that I wish were in the game. Sorry, achievements, because they're not trophies. That's the point of this whole thing. And these are called Steel Soul and Steel Heart, for one thing. And these are for going through the semi-secret permadeath mode and completing it and 100%ing it in that order. That's the 2 trophies, achievements. You can tell I'm really annoyed that these aren't trophies.
The premise of this is then they have taken out hard trophies from the game that were hard achievements from the game that were on the Xbox or Steam version, and the PlayStation version, they're not there. They've just not ported them. Is that because they've gone past the limit of how many trophies the game could have on its original list? Or is it just because they didn't... There has to be a motive behind not putting these harder trophies on the PlayStation version, surely. Because, again, I don't agree with it. I think all games should have the same trophies on every platform. Again, it's not my jam, but I still think that if you release this game on all platforms on the same day, it should have the same trophies and achievements on every single platform. It's very weird how they've decided, yeah, PlayStation version can have easier trophies. Why?
I don't like it at all. The other thing that's missing, mind you, Because there's another one that's kind of annoying, is speed completion. For achieving the 100% completion of the game and completing it in a speed run time of under 30 hours. Though we technically do have the harder speed run, at least, of having to complete the game in 5 hours. You just don't have to 100% it.
I mean, put it this way, I don't like speedruns. I'm one of the people that despises them, but I would still, if they have to be in the game to match the other list, I would say they should be in the game regardless. If they're making the game easier for PlayStation users potentially, based on this news about these trophies and achievements being removed and altered, I'm not a fan of it because A, it's not uniform across platforms, it's not fair for people who might want the same challenge. 2, it's almost akin to when people like Sifu was considered a hard game when it came out. It got patched to make it easier, therefore the platinum is significantly easier to obtain. We spoke last month about Liza P. That beautiful Souls-like also had its legs kneecapped, or its trophies kneecapped at least, because technically you can still do it. You can still do it, but they've made it so you can do it on story mode. And remember, as the PSNP guide author said, I highly recommend you play this on easy mode to get the trophies really easy, because it's a much better way to play the game. No, let people decide what they want to play on. But the game was intended to be hard originally for the trophies. But fine, they've updated it. I don't agree with it, but what can we have? But my entire premise of that, if we go back to Mein Leben, imagine Mein Leben was kind of a big middle finger to the fans for saying the games, the trophies and achievements are too easy in the first place, make it harder. And that's where Mein Leben came from. However, if Machine Games came out and updated that tomorrow to where you had a autosave per level for Mein Leben difficulty, suddenly the rarity of that trophy would astronomically drop. It would be a common trophy before you know it, because everyone could just back that save up one level at a time until they get Mein Leben. You see how that would remove the prestigiousness of that trophy. Now, not everyone cares about other people's trophies, right? Some people do. Some of us like looking at someone else's trophies and be like, oh, wow, that's impressive. Other people think, I don't give a crap about your trophies, I only care about mine. It just is, right? We got to remember, we're not the centre of a universe. We're all our own centres of each universe, essentially, and people close to us. So we're not going to care about some stranger a million miles across the planet and what they've done trophy-wise, unless you're hardcore into the hobby and want to compare your stats against theirs.
The last thing I will say about Hollow Knight, the most recent patch that they've done at the time of this recording, Team Cherry is making the bosses easier. I don't understand. And this is what I understand even less. People who are familiar with the game and who know the game inside and out, all the feedback has suggested that the bosses that they've made easier, some of the easiest bosses in the game.
Well, that's where the problem lies. Why are you making the game easier when there's only two solutions to that. You're just doing it because you want to make it easier for random reasons, or you're admitting you badly balanced the game and you didn't release it in its proper format that you were happy with, and therefore now you've balanced it. But considering you said people say they're some of the easier bosses in the game, that makes no sense. But yeah, before we move on to Nintendo, I'll just finish that thought before it completely vanishes. The point is, some trophies have prestige, and you are happy and proud to earn them. So if you suddenly remove that requirement for that, and now everyone can get Mein Leben really easily, guess what? Everyone else beforehand, they might be slightly annoyed. Some of them will be annoyed, some of them won't care, because they know they've done it the proper way. But some people will be like, why did I go for all that when you're just going to update the game 2 years later and make it so much easier to do for everyone else? It removes that challenge aspect of it. And then if you look at, for example, you could go through a game like Mein Leben and say, right, I'm going to do the Mein Leben challenge. I'm only going to use a pistol for the entire game. I'm not allowed to pick up anything else like armor plates, nothing. You can make it extra anally hard for yourself. But no one will know that because that's your own personal challenge. So even if they update a game and make Mein Leben a 1 out of 10 difficulty, and you think, yeah, but I can still do it the legit way. If anyone goes past your profile at that point and sees you've earned it, they'll be like, yeah, it's easy. That's not a hard trophy. So you see where the loss of prestige comes from. Again, trophies are a passport, not for yourself, but for other people who might be interested in looking at your achievements anyway. So the fact that now they see that and think, they're worthless, it has some kind of effect, both for you and your desire to hunt them, and just for everyone else looking at your profile. But in other news, Nintendo has been doing some shady crap, and a lot of people are not happy.
Literally, we've titled this, Has Nintendo Gone Too Far? I'm not going to dwell on this because I don't want people thinking I'm like going down on Nintendo. I just think it's important from a fundamental reason, which Steve didn't understand originally at first. When I explained it to him, though, he was like, I understand why you want to talk about this now. But Nintendo loves patents, and very recently a new patent has been passed, technically 2 patents. It allows them to block off 2 things while they try to destroy Pal World even more. Summoning anything inside of a game. So summoning creatures, summoning a character, using them to battle, and riding on them. Those things are patented by them now. Now, why did I give a damn? A lot of people are probably thinking it's just Pal World. But if you think about it, if you really sit and think about it, this patent now gives them the ability to shut down any games that has the concepts of summoning and using those summons to battle on your behalf. There's a couple of IPs that come to mind that you might all be aware of. Digimon, Persona, Monster Hunter, and the whole goddamn Soulsborne genre.
Yep, because you can summon Solaire, for example, to come and help you with a boss fight, and that would technically count as a summon. So Nintendo could easily go, oh, well, that counts, so you're screwed, buddy. And you mentioned Pal World. Go platinum it while you can. We got the plat a while ago with myself, Crimson, and Raven. We absolutely loved the game. The fact that now you can't even use flying pals now. Now you got to fly on your bloody something else. I think you just fly on your glider now and fly around with that, which is very weird. It just goes to show you what Nintendo's doing. And personally, from my standpoint, I say buy yourself a Steam Deck. Either way, Nintendo need to definitely sort something out because their greed has gone too far. The corporate has clearly got all the reds up all their asses at this point. But speaking of corporations, Sony has released a corporate report, and they have made clear in there to advance their position as a creative leader in single-player experiences. Now, I had to dig through this, and I am not someone who is versed in going through corporate documents. It was a big PDF, and I read quite a bit of it. But that says a lot because
it was hilarious.
Yeah, my IQ level is not high enough to handle a corporate report, and there's a lot of big words in there. I'll puppet them, but I don't know what they mean. But in the Sony's corporate report, it did say under a section regarding evolving the business and pursuing further growth, and I quote, going forward, expansion of our user base through highly narrative-driven single-player video games and live service video games. Now, this was under a segment regarding pursuing further growth with Sony under their creative entertainment division and increasing their business. So that is good news in the sense that they are still pursuing single-player experiences. They see that as a value, which means you're going to get more games like Horizon, Last of Us, Uncharted. But at the same note, they also mentioned live service games in the same sentence. So they're clearly not giving up that yet, which is bad considering the embarrassment of Concord. So hopefully they kind of get the message of live service. I mean, they all say, like, right, live service, yeah, live service can make so much money. The odds of you landing that one game, like Marvel Rivals, or like League of Legends or something else, that's going to earn money, Overwatch, it's minuscule. And I think Sony have missed the boat on it to the point where it's like, focus on your bread and butter. That is single player games and not live service. I just don't see a way Sony can have a live service game at this point. I mean, even Destiny's live service, I believe, at this point considered. But that game is, again, it's not the same as it used to be, and people don't talk as highly of it as they used to. I mean, at this point, they're better off going for Destiny 3. Like, I know wasn't Marathon, the Halo. Obviously Halo was the spiritual successor back then to Marathon. I'm not sure if they wanted to make that live service, and it's like, that killed all my desire to play that game. I thought it was going to be maybe a single player game, co-op potentially. Live service, I think, pretty sure I heard it was, and I was like, yep, don't care about it. Marathon can be gone now. Don't want to play it.
There is a happy balance, I think, because like I did read. I'm not going to dwell on this, but I did read into it a little bit myself. Obviously, Sony is the market leader and corporate leader in terms of storytelling.
They are.
They are number one in the world, and they stressed that they want to keep this, but they want to take it to new lengths, which I think is very important. They're not getting cocky. They're all like, we know that you all see us as the best. We want to be better. So that's very important.
It is very important.
But I do think it's important for them to not completely abandon live service, because you're cutting off an entire community. You just need to start and not try to do 12 games at the same time.
Well, that's the problem. They've got the claws in too many pies. They're going into it of like, right, let's just make 10 live service games because maybe one of them will stick and one of them will be good.
The good thing is I think they've acknowledged it. They cancelled a lot of ones that they knew might not do well, especially with some of their very important IPs. And obviously the leads over at Sony have come out and said, we don't want to abandon this. We learned our lessons with Concord. We're listening. And we're going to try again. So that's important. And it would be a shame to see it completely cut out of one of the platforms.
That is it for the news, but before we move on, we will say there's one more news item out there, and that is the Platinum Podcast is back. It's been a long time, but it's finally come back. We don't know if it'll be out by the time this episode is out, but it might be. It probably is. If it isn't, you'll probably be seeing it very shortly. Hopefully it is, but you'll be seeing it very shortly either way. So Gartholuski and Peanut Bro are back, which is always good because the more podcasts we have, the better. Especially for people like myself, because I'm not going to lie, I'm not a head up my own ass type person. I don't watch this podcast back outside of editing, so it's good, obviously, that we've got podcasts.
I mean, his head is up his own arse.
Because of stupidity.
Podcast himself.
Yeah, but we don't watch our own podcast because it's like, well, I already know what was said. I edited this damn thing. I know what happened, so why would I talk? Why would I want to watch it?
It is exciting news. It'll be good to see it come back because I think both Steve and I, we can both agree, all Vaults Unlocked, even ZXLs or the Plat Decks podcast, none of those would exist without the Platinum Podcast. It was the inspiration for all of this to even be a thing. So it's so good to see that the boys are back.
And who knows, we might work together in the future. You might see us on there and them on here. You never know.
Absolutely.
But it's all about creating a good community for everyone to enjoy. And bants are bants. And that's what's important. But we are moving on to now the main topic, the juicy topic, which is collectibles and how they affect our trophy and achievement hunting and gaming as a whole, which is quite juicy because some people hate them, some people love them, some people are indifferent. So I think the best way we can kind of break this down so it's not a massive chaos is probably discuss the type of collectibles, which I think there's three. And I'll start with the first type. We'll probably both talk about a few games for examples for you, but the first one would be the useful collectibles. These are ones you'll probably be familiar with. Think of games like Psychonauts I mentioned earlier. These collectibles actually increase your psychic rank, which improve your abilities and make them more powerful. Well, that is an example of, despite annoying, and there's too many of them, the collectibles are good because they increase your character's abilities and powers. They've got some urgency to pick them up if you want to be stronger. Wolverine. X-Men Origins Wolverine, the OG, that brilliant game, which is the best Wolverine game, best superhero game, in my opinion, on any platform until maybe I know Marvel Spider-Man's brilliant, but that game, despite being a movie title of all things, I just adore it to this day. You could get upgrades throughout the maps and collectibles, should say. That gave you upgrades to your skill points, I believe, your abilities, and even costumes you could unlock. So you could show yourself different as Wolverine. And that's just a few I can think of off the top of my head. They're collectibles you want to find, trophies aside, because there's a reason to get them. I assume you know some games as well in this category, really?
Yeah, I have two really easy examples for that. One of them we actually talked about last month, and was the reason that this whole topic even existed. Infamous. You're picking up those power cores, you're making yourself stronger, you're enabling yourself to be able to use your powers for longer and spam them as much as humanly possible. Literally an example of a useful upgrade. Is there a lot of them? Absolutely. Does Steve despise the idea of having to pick them up? Yes. Do I think it's a big deal? No. You have a radar, an in-game radar. It's called laziness at this point if you're complaining about it.
Hey, I've just heard many people in the past complain about it and say it's crap. That's the only reason I was like, right, I don't want to go through all of that. But it was in the comments last week that I should go play it because it's not as bad if you make yourself a map. Making yourself a physical map sounds fun, to be fair, or printing one off. So that way I probably would be enticed.
The other classic example, which shouldn't surprise people when it's me talking, some of the select Resident Evil titles, i.e. 4, 5, and 6. As you know, you could pick up treasures and things like that, and you sold them to the likes of the merchant, or you sold them in 5 and 6 specifically in your item menu between chapters and game, where you'd be able to buy new guns and stuff like that. It's technically a type of collectible because you had to collect them all to get trophies, but while they didn't technically have a lore reason as to why they were important or anything like that, you were selling them and getting yourself better equipment. So pretty useful.
Yeah, so that is very useful. That does make sense. So you can see where there's a lot of useful collectibles around. But Brady did mention lore there for reasons for collectibles. Now, I will emphasize this is lore as in L-O-R-E, as in story lore, not lore as in you're going to get arrested. My northern accent is terrible, and it sounds like I'm saying law. I can't say it properly. I don't know why. I just can't say the damn word. Either way,
I'm dying.
not trophies. Collectibles that give you some kind of world-building lore. Not Law and Order, lore. Or will give you some context. Anything. So think of The Last of Us. You can go around, you will find a note or a journal piece, and you'll read that, and you're like, wow, this is really building this world, or I know who lived in this house now, I know what happened here. Granted, the Firefly pendants are absolutely worthless. That is the useless category we'll get into next. But Dark Souls and Bloodborne, prime examples, all Souls games. The stories are quite light. If anything, you don't really learn much. You go into your inventory, you read the items, the weapons, you start learning about the world and the lore through them, through the items. So essentially, you could say that's a collectible in that sense. Those are useful. Not as directly, but they're useful from a context standpoint.
But another one, which I've done personally twice, prototype. First prototype specifically, has a lot of collectibles. They're in very convoluted areas. You need a map. There's 200 landmarks and 50 hint orbs. So that's 250 collectibles scattered in random places throughout the map. Some of them so close to each other that you'll think you've picked up one, but you haven't. But when you collect them, they give you EP points, which I think is evolution points, which goes towards you being able to unlock your powers and upgrade yourself in the game and get stronger, which is very important for any playthrough, but especially the harder playthroughs where you're not allowed to die.
That one almost sounds like it belongs in the first category, to be fair. That's more like a upgrade rather than a lore building thing, but either way, it's useful regardless. It's useful regardless, but not all collectibles are useful, unfortunately. Plenty of games out there have collectibles that are completely and utterly useless. Whether there's 10 of them or 5,000 of them, they're useless regardless. They've got no value, they are just there to annoy you, to stretch out a game's playtime, because the developers clearly thought there's nothing else in there. You're going to be bored. Let's try and keep this person on the game longer. Which is why I don't understand why a game such as Alan Wake, the original, a game I've loved since the Xbox 360 days, but if there's one major annoyance, which I alluded to earlier, is the coffee thermos. Is it thermi, thermos, thermoses? I don't know. Either way, yeah, coffee, exactly. Brady's got a coffee right there. You've got to collect 100 of these, and unlike what we just talked about, every single one of them has got zero meaning. The only meaning they've got is for your achievement or trophy. That was what they are there for. And I've never understood that, because Alan Wake is such a brilliant thriller, survival, horror experience where you would not even need something as stupid as 100 thermoses in there for people to collect to stretch the game time out. It's like, why have you put this in this masterpiece? It makes no sense. That's one of the things that makes me not want to go back and do it on PlayStation now, because I totally forgot about that until I remembered, and I was like, ooh, maybe I don't want to go back and do Alan Wake. I'll just maybe play the second game. That is a prime example of something which gives you nothing. Doesn't give you a skin, doesn't give you an upgrade, doesn't give you any details about the world. It's just, nah, that's it. Coffee's in the game, go get 100 coffee thermoses. Yeah, that. Thank you, Remedy, thank you. I just don't agree with that.
I'll see your 100 thermoses, and I'll times you by 7.
What's that, 602 something?
So,
maths is hard. That's a reference coming up soon.
We're talking about Digimon again, ladies and gentlemen. Specifically the Cyber Sleuth games, Cyber Sleuth 1 and Hacker's Memory. In the first game, you had to collect Digimon medals. Technically, you could say it's lore for Digimon fans, and something that we should all love in anyway, because if you've watched Digimon, you'll know why Digimon medals are important. Technically, medals are important in general, but that doesn't mean I want to goddamn collect 500 of these things that do absolutely nothing in the game other than give me my damn trophy. Especially when a lot of them are RNG.
Well, you see, Guy Ferruski's told me about this plenty of times as well, because I was wanting to play this game, and both you and him told me about these medals. And Yeah, I can't say it makes me want to play the game. It's really putting me off ever going near it.
The game is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. However, I will stress this: if you want the platinum in both of the games, for the love of all that is holy in this world, plat the first game first, and keep your save. Don't delete your save. Hacker's Memory is a thing. They added in an additional 200 medals. To get the trophy in the game, you need to have the original 500 from the first goddamn game. But I digress, guys. As much as I hated doing that, there's a lot of people out there that are a lot like me who played RPGs and really love RPGs. And because they played those RPGs and adventure and very story-driven experiences, we're very well used to going around these open worlds, exploring, really appreciating the map, seeing that beautiful water physics, seeing the trees, watching the animals, like just taking in every little bit of detail that we just find in these collectibles naturally. So that's why I personally don't really get annoyed by them too much, unless you're something like the Black Agumon medal, in which case you piss me off to no end. But it's a less of a chore and a less of a big deal to people like me because we're so used to finding them naturally just because of our normal play style with what we grew up with.
But obviously, despite that, like you say, people enjoy exploring these vast worlds to find collectibles. But at the same time, just like trophies, a lot of people do get dopamine, as we've talked about many times in this sector regarding trophies, collectibles, difficulties. There's always dopamine when you complete something you consider a task. Just to touch back on Psychonauts, Math is Hard is the trophy for getting level 101 Psychonaut rank, which means you've got to get every single collectible in the game. Every single one. Which, now, I said they were useful. I did say they upgrade your abilities, which I'm fine with. I just think there is too many. I think there's about 500 and odd unique figments in the game, as far as like what they look like, because they're kind of floating holograms that move around sometimes and hard to see. But in total, there's well over 1,500 of them. And that's not counting the mental cobwebs, the emotional baggage is 5 per level of those. There's usually 5 or more, 5 to 10, I say, cobwebs per level. And there's plenty of more collectibles like artifacts to dig up. It just keeps going. There's just too many, to where it almost made me delete the game when I first played it, as I said earlier. That's a case of where you're scaring me away. Some games out there do obviously offer get half the collectibles in this game and it gives you the collectible trophy regardless. I think that's a happy medium. It's still saying, go get half, go get 70% of the collectibles. You're still having to find a good majority of them, but at the same time, you get a trophy for it without actually ruining your experience. Because, I mean, look at GTA 4 as a prime example. I've not done that since the 360 days, and I know I'm going to do it on a PS3 because I'm a sucker and I want that platinum. Now, pigeons as a collectible is bad enough. There's 200 of them. I've done it before. They are located around Liberty City, and it's not just like the PS2 version, which would be bad enough. GTA 4 is rather detailed for its time on the 360 and PS3. It's a gorgeous looking game. I still want a part of it to this day. Finding these, unless you used a map or a guide, would be damn near impossible. You would spend like thousands of hours going through Liberty City. If you've done it, I'm impressed without a guide. So it becomes a point of like, this is just pointless. You do it, it's there just to torture us as gamers. I just don't agree with trophies like that and they really infuriate me. Despite the fact I'll do it again because I'm a pure idiot. But Crimson mentioned earlier, with his vast worlds like Elder Scrolls or even games like Uncharted, he likes exploring every inch. And he doesn't mind doing that because he's used to doing it and he enjoys it. For me, it's a direct opposite. I like exploring games like Elder Scrolls because I want to take in the world around me. But what I don't want to do is be looking in every nook and cranny for a collectible. I don't mind it for loot. But The Last of Us and Uncharted is a prime example. I adore those games. I don't want to be walking around there and having to look in every single corner, ruining the pace of the game just to find a stupid golden thing that should not even be there. Yes, they might unlock weapon skins or skins, which is somewhat useful if you want to walk around a Sully in the game for some reason. But I don't agree with it because it ruins the pacing of the game. Or a game like Last of Us where you're constantly using your instinct button to scan the environment to try and see if anything pings because you're like, ooh, there could be a collectible over there. Those are very story-driven games, and they're very well meticulously paced when the game's being directed. They expect you to go through the game at a certain pace. So to stop and take a look around for collectibles completely de-immerses me from that experience. That's what makes me absolutely despise those collectibles. Not the fact that they're worthless, which they are to begin with, those ones. More so the fact that they take me out of the game. And there's a final point. The ones that are out there that you can't track, that you've got to literally write down yourself because there's no menu to track them, or even worse, ones that can be missed. those, and there's one of those in Psychonauts, just as a heads up, remember, there is a collectible you can miss and have to do the full game again. Keep that in mind. Black Velvetopia, once you get that level, there is one collectible you can miss. Keep that in mind. Those type of collectible trophies can go stuff it up their own anus, because I don't like them.
But anyway, that is the main subject on. Obviously, you can see me and Steve have very different opinions. He mostly hates collectibles, whereas I tolerate them. Sometimes I appreciate them, sometimes I like them, but I tolerate them. They're not a big deal for me. They are a massive deal for him. We're two sides of the same coin, which is the beauty of all these things.
That's what makes it good.
Exactly.
Yes, because we can agree to disagree, and we've got different likes and different hates and all that kind of good stuff, which makes for good discussion, because we aren't going to kiss each other's ass. And more importantly, what do you think about this collectible situation? Put your comments down below, because we know it's a very varied subject. And why do we know that? Because it's time for the community discussion. And we have got quite a few comments regarding this. As always, we're going to read them one by one, as before. We did forget to ask last time. If you don't want us to do this, just let us know. We don't know how we're going to approach this, because we do get quite a lot of feedback, which we want. We want to showcase the community in this. When we do start bringing guests on, it will be a content creator, a community member, content creator, community member. So naturally, we do want to showcase what people are talking about. But if you're finding this a bit too long-winded to go through each comment, just let us know, and we'll try and figure out a solution that serves the community best going forward. But as we said, we got plenty of comments regarding the situation around collectibles, trophies, achievements, and gaming. First up is from Facepalmer, and he says, I would say that if they add lore, or there is a reasonable amount, and the game has a chapter select feature to clean up, then fair game. But if they are there just to pad out and require an extensive checklist to track, then nope, I will avoid going for it, which I completely agree with.
And next up we have someone who's returned from Lord knows wherever they were, Lord Ace X, who we haven't seen in a while, and what they have to say on the matter is, if they're on the map and or few enough or easy enough to obtain, then I don't mind them. If there's like 200 to 1,000 of them, then I have to look at a guide for the half of them, and then we're going to have some problems.
Next up is 997.jn. I had to remove the hyperlink from that because it was trying to take me to very spicy places. I'm not joking. They say, missable collectibles are a huge red flag for me, as they essentially force you to be handheld by a guide. Some games, rarely, do it right by adding incentives such as XP, items, lore, etc. And in that case, I'm an advocate for them, which is what we have just been talking about, and I highly agree with the missable collectibles. They suck.
Next up, we've got This Dad's Platinum Journey, and what they have to say is, I don't mind collectibles if they have something in the game to reward you or provide nice lore or extra game story. An example would be Resident Evil, where everything you collect has something to add to the experience. Hungry. Tasty. I think Dad's Platinum Journey is turning into a zombie at the end of that comment.
Potentially, yes. Either that, or he's very hungry, which I can relate to. But next up is Pat Moses, who says, Black Sad Under the Skin is the worst collection experience I've seen. It's immersion breaking, since there is no freedom. Also, 100 items in 160 locations, randomized with each new game. It's best to delete your system files and start over on the collectible run and take physical notes, which I've not heard of the game, but I cannot say. That sounds absolutely horrible, so I don't blame you there. I feel sorry for you right there, and I'm thanking you for bringing this to our attention, because that just sounds disgusting.
Next up, we have our good friend, Shadow, but as he's known on Discord as, Goku Black was right. Anime reference for you people out there. Thief has some annoying collectibles. You couldn't track the majority of them, and alongside missable trophies, you had to watch a 100% walkthrough guide to get it. I do hate when you have to look through guides and videos and stuff like that to find collectibles. Sometimes it's useful, but if you have to watch an entire video just for a trophy, that's where you lose me.
Yeah, I have to fully agree. And Ray Baby comes in next with Depends. Collectibles, like the ones in the infamous games that serve a purpose, are fine. They're also fine if shown on the map for me to go and pick up. If I have to stay glued to another screen to pick up 101 treasures in Uncharted, I'd rather not. It makes me take a lot longer to finish a plat if that's the case.
Next up, we've got Rob27, who has a lot to say on this matter, mind you. It really depends whether or not the collectibles are an absolute pain. Take Marvel Spider-Man, for example. Those collectibles had no impact on my plat hunt. They were super accessible and didn't derail me. Now, Returnal, on the other hand, insert my PTSD at this point, completely left me with a sour taste in my mouth and with how I felt about the game. I can relate. It became an absolute chore and ruined the game near the end of my plot hunt. It really depends on how the game is organized and sets the collectibles. Personally, I try not to put collectibles as a requirement since I'm always I'm playing the game first, then consider the plot before anything else. Absolutely the perfect mentality to have. You should be playing the game and experiencing the game first and then worry about the platinum later. Well done, Rob. I'm proud of you.
Which is something I like to agree with as well, when my brain can stick to that premise. But next up, Baram says, my OCD can appreciate collectibles if they are done well. Some examples for me are The Witcher 3. You can use the Gwent cards, or Spider-Man 2018, the backpacks are references. So for me, I enjoy collectibles if they are meaningful in some way, not just for the sake of being there, like the treasures in Uncharted. So I actually prefer it if a game has collectibles, but only if the collectibles are meaningful in some way. And yes, the collectibles in Uncharted do technically give you skins and weapon skins, but I still, despite my fanhood as a Uncharted mega fan, I still say they're worthless, so I agree.
Speaking about outfits, our very good friend Raven has this to say. Love and hate them. Like them more in older games. They had more of a reason, like new outfits or a weapon. In the case of Bully or Canis Canem Edit. But for the last few years, it feels more like filler.
I mean, yes, it does feel like they are using collectibles now to stretch out game time. Why do we live in the world we live in? Either way, Platinum Vault comes in next, saying, for a long time I was immune to grinding and collecting collectibles. I didn't care if I had to collect 100 plus collectibles. It felt like a superpower. But since I earned my 200th platinum last year, congratulations by the way, after 10 years of personal trophy hunting, this is no longer the case. Collectibles are a waste of time. I never read the text logs. More games should add convenient in-game collectible trackers, mark on the map, and unique identifier for clarification. If they improve my gameplay experience, I am all for it, but most collectibles add nothing but more time to clock.
Next up we have our friend Excellence3. I just accept collectibles as part of trophy hunting, no matter the amount or in-game effect. They don't bother me, and will never be a plot blocker. I'll gladly take a grind over difficulty any day, which is very interesting because back whenever I met Excellence, he was very big on taking on challenges and especially difficult ones, so interesting to see his mentality's changed.
Which does happen to us all. And speaking of mentalities, we've got my friend Topher next, where he says, excessive collectibles for the sake of dragging a game out turn me off. I enjoy collectibles that provide lore or upgrades during the game. I felt like this since before trophies, but trophies have made me go for some of the mind-numbingly dull collectible grinds. Topher is a 100% completionist, so I can only understand the pain he is going through. But Mickey had a lot of good stuff to say, did he not, Crimson?
Yeah, Mickey made it short and sweet and summed it up very perfectly. Fluff. Prototype 1. That is all. I can relate. He had to do it twice, like me. I don't know why we do this to each other.
Well, you say he said fluff. He said much harsher words, which I would agree with. But next up is Tesco Meal Deal, which is a goated meal deal, to be fair. Collectibles don't specifically put me off a platinum. I'll go for a plat either way, although I'm more likely to enjoy it more if there aren't a ridiculous amount, but if they don't add anything to the experience or develop the world or lore in some way, they get boring pretty quick. The collectibles in Red Dead 2 are a pretty good example. There's some great world building and stories to be found, and they really make the world feel alive, and that they have a reason to be there. Or games like The Infamous and Ghostwire, where they have a reason to exist in world.
A returning commenter, Hectoid, had this to say. I bet there's a fine line with collectibles. Are they there for the sake of padding out the game, or do they add narrative to the story? Missable collectibles have put me off playing games, as I don't want to sit with a guide collecting over 200 odd items. Looking at you, The Last of Us Remastered. Totally ruins immersion, or the fun times I had with the game. And you know what? That's a very valid point. A couple people have said similar in terms of ruining immersions or ruining the memories of the game, so I can't blame you.
Well, that is precisely what I was talking about earlier. Just the act of looking for collectibles can literally break my immersion in the games and de-immersify me, so I completely relate. And the final one was from Becca's Sad Boy, which is a big boy. Let's see if I can read this without dying. I really like when games have more collectibles than are required for the trophies. That way I am incentivized to explore without feeling like I need a guide to get them all. Realistically, there is no way I will ever be thorough enough to check every location that a collectible could ever be hid on my own, but I certainly could find 80% on my own. That approach allows me to play the game blind without having the dilemma of using a collectible guide during my blind playthrough or losing the time on the platinum. That said, I won't not do a game I really love just because it has collectibles. I will just be way more annoyed if they do collectibles poorly. Regarding their lore importance, I like it when they have at least some significance in building the game world, but I don't like it when they are critical to understanding the plot. It's a fine line, but I do think most games that use collectibles for lore toe the line very well.
Which, honestly, that's a very unique opinion. This is the first time we've actually heard someone saying that they like them being lore building, but not absolutely essential and critical to understanding things. Which, Becca is right, there is a fine line. I absolutely love them in terms of whatever lore they give. But I have to admit, I do agree. If they're essential to understanding things, a lot of people are going to miss out. And that's not cool.
Yeah. 100%. Like, I can't think of a game that does that off the top of my head, but I am definitely sure they exist out there. That would completely turn me off a game if I was playing it. Fine, miss a collectible. Suddenly, I don't understand half the story. That'd be very, very annoying to me on a personal level.
It would be infuriating, even for someone like me who doesn't mind them. But from the look of things, the consensus, again, like the last episode, seems to be split down the middle. There's a lot of people out there who don't mind collectibles, but there's just as much people who absolutely despise them and think that it ruins their immersion. So it's a happy balance. Like with me and Steve, there's a lot of people out there who are two sides of the very same coin.
And a lot of people do seem to like it when they're useful, as in giving lore or giving upgrades, some kind of incentive that is going to make your experience better in some way or another rather than detract from it. I will say Tesco meal deals comment. For example, Red Dead Redemption 2, a lot of people do say they dislike that game because of the collectibles and the trophy grind to get the platinum. That game is very special to me. I would platinum it again if I had a PS5 version available. Drop of the hat, no problem. I never once found those collectibles boring for some reason, as someone who generally hates them, so that may be a special case. Just the world was built so well, and I felt such a joy exploring it, hunting each animal, finding every single story throughout the map. It just became a case of I want to spend as much time in this world as possible, and I'll be sad when I've got no reason to stay here besides playing it. But at that point, you have got no reason because you've spent 400 hours in the game. You're done with it at that point. Until another stack comes around, I suppose, when you've got more of a reason to jump back in. But I like how they put it because a lot of people do crap on Red Dead 2 for that. I've heard so many people saying they find it boring, which is fair enough. I just think it's one of those edge cases where I think the world is so well built. It's a gem to play. It's a gem to hunt the collectibles. It's a gem to plat. And if every game did it like that, I think there'd be a lot less hate towards collectibles, even from me. But as you say, it's been a good consensus. But I think that is enough about collectibles. We've talked over it. Again, we want to see your opinions down below because who knows, you might come up with a brand new surprising opinion on such matters. But we want to know them regardless, even if your comment's already technically been here. We want you to voice it regardless. But next month, the topic you've been waiting to hear is a juicy one. It is featuring the question of platinums. Are they becoming too easy? Silent Hill 2 is a prime example. Platinums are getting easier. Why is that? Is it a problem? Not every platinum should be that easy. But I suppose we'll find out in next month's topic.
Very, very dicey subject that we're going to be approaching next month.
We always go for dicey subjects. We don't take this lightly, even if it'll get our ass kicked. It's just one of those things.
Yeah, I'm both looking forward to it and not looking forward to it because I know there's going to be a lot of people who are going to think that we're gatekeeping, and there is a fine line, and we'll be making sure that we don't tread over that fine line of gatekeeping.
Either way, this is all Vaults Unlocked, locking up for the week. I've been VaultBoySteve.
And I'm Crimson Purgatory.
And that is us signing out. Have a good month, everyone.
Sayonara, Wild Hearts.
That's my line. Damn it. Sayonara.